Some teas are made from leaves and other teas are made from stems. Each produces a different flavor and a different nutrient profile in the final tea. And in this video, we're going to compare the two. We'll also take a look at two different stem teas, one from Shizuoka and one from Uji. Even though these teas look the same, the taste is very different. So first, let's introduce the three teas. For the first stem tea, we have the Kukicha Osada. This is a tea we discovered when we met with the Osada family in Shizuoka. They took us into the mountains and showed us the organic village of Isagawa, where their teas are grown. This is a collection of small farmers who have committed to growing tea without pesticides or chemicals. The mountain soil up here is rocky and mineral rich, which shows up in the final flavor of the teas. The second stem tea is the Chanoka Kukicha from Mr. Takada in Uji. This is a newer stem tea in our collection, but it has a very unique flavor that you'll get to see in a second. By the way, Kukicha means stem tea, so you'll see it in the names of a lot of different stem teas. For our leaf tea, we have the Yamaga no Sato. This sencha is grown on one of the very first tea farms I visited in Japan. It's one of my personal favorite teas, and I think it's a good representation of Japanese sencha teas. It has a strong flavor, green color, and it also works great as a cold brew. So before we brew up these teas, let's take a look at the leaves. I say leaves, but as you can see here, there are a lot of stems as well. The Kukicha Osada has a pretty even balance between stems and leaves. You can see some dark green leaves tightly rolled into needle shapes and some light yellow stems. When we toured a tea factory in Shizuoka, we learned how these stems and leaves are separated in a special type of machine. They can then be reintroduced to the leaves in different ratios depending on the type of stem tea the producer wants to make. When we take a look at the Kukicha Chanoka, we notice a higher ratio of stems to leaves. If I had to guess, I would say it's about 60% stems and 40% leaves. The Yamaga, on the other hand, is 100% leaves. When I visited the farm, I learned that they even have a color sorting machine that could automatically identify the yellow stems and pull them out, so only the dark green leaves would end up in the final tea. The leaves are a little bit smaller, and this is due to the fact that the Yamaga is a fukumushi or deep steam sencha. The tea is steamed for a longer time, and during that time, the leaves are broken down and they become more brittle. This makes them more likely to break into these smaller leaf particles, and it also produces a greener color in the cup of tea. So let's measure out these teas and brew them up. For all three of these teas, I'll be using 5 grams of leaves and 150 milliliters of water. 70 degrees Celsius or 160 degrees Fahrenheit works well for all three teas, but if anything, the stem teas could be brewed a little bit hotter than leaf teas. The reason you brew green teas with lower temperature water is because they are high in catechins, which can create a bitter flavor in the final tea. These catechins are better extracted at higher temperatures, so if you keep the water cool enough, you don't get too many of them. The stems have less catechins than the leaves, so they can stand up to higher temperatures. Anyways, I was able to measure out 5 grams of leaves for all of these teas exactly, except for the stem teas, which I overestimated the weight of. The reason is because the stems are less dense than the leaves, so you actually need more leaves to hit the 5 grams. This is why it's important to use a scale when you measure out your tea. You can also use a scale to measure out the water because 1 milliliter of water is exactly 1 gram. Let's let those teas brew for 1 minute, but while we wait, if you haven't subscribed yet, now would be a really good time to do that so you can make sure that you don't miss another tea video. Now let's pour out those teas and compare them. Once they're poured out, it's also nice to get an aroma of the wet leaves. The Yamaga was super strong on these steamed vegetable and sweet edamame notes, with some tropical fruits mixed in. I really love the aroma of this tea. The Chanoka Kukicha was light and fragrant, with notes of flowers and fruit. The Kukicha Osada was also light and floral, but there wasn't much fruitiness in the aroma. The flavor of the Yamaga no Sato began with this sweet corn note, which eventually developed into a savory edamame and berry fruitiness. The flavor was powerful and the aftertaste was long. This was very different from the stem teas, which are a bit more subtle. The Chanoka Kukicha was sweeter, slightly more savory, and had a little bit of fruitiness to it. It still kept that minerality which accompanies many stem teas, but it wasn't the main focus. I kept getting this delicate strawberry note, but the fruitiness wasn't quite as powerful as it was with the Yamaga. The Kukicha Osada was even more subtle. There was a crisp and slightly dry flavor with notes of straw or hay. The minerality can be felt as a tingling sensation, particularly in the finish of the tea, which is a result of the mineral-rich soil the tea was grown in. The tea also drifts into a flowery direction, which was really interesting. So overall, the leaves have more flavor than the stems, and that's why they tend to be used for premium teas like gyokuro, sencha, and matcha. The stem teas, however, have a light and mild flavor that makes them easy to drink throughout the day. So what about the nutrient profiles of the two tea types? The leaves will have more antioxidants and caffeine, while the stems will have more minerals and less caffeine. Kukicha is a good choice as an afternoon tea. It's lower in caffeine, so it won't keep you up all night. and it's high in minerals, which can help with digestion. Stem teas also tend to be significantly less expensive than leaf teas, so you don't need to save them for special occasions. If you want to try any of these teas, you can find them all on our website, neoteas.com. After traveling around Japan for the past few years, we met with dozens of farmers and sampled hundreds of different types of pesticide-free green teas. We've ultimately selected a handful of our favorites, and we'd love to share them with you. Just visit our website and pick out a few you think you'd like. If you have any questions about green tea, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Until then, we'll see you next time.